This week on the WriterCon podcast.
You know, when I'm asked this question, there's a lot of answers I could possibly give. And so the one I'm going to give today may not be the one I give tomorrow, but for today, I would say read the good stuff. Because when you're a writer, what you're reading is feeding your writing brain.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Renee Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
I'm joined today by my usual cohorts, Renee Gutteridge and Jesse Ulrich. We have some news on the WriterCon front. The conference schedule is now on the website, so you can check it out and see if there's anything that might help you get where you want to go with your writing career. I'm betting you'll see more than one thing. In fact, I'm betting you'll see a lot. And then after you've reviewed the schedule, check out our list of speakers. We have more writers, more agents, more publishers, more people providing services to authors than we have ever had before. We're up to almost 70 presenters now. Renee, you always manage the pitch sessions and the private consultations and that kind of stuff. Basically making sure everybody gets a chance to talk to whoever they want to see, be it an agent or a publisher or a mentor or whatever. How do you juggle all that?
I don't know. But
you just don't want to give away your secrets.
Well, you have to see me do it to understand that I try to do it well. And we really do try to get everybody seen and heard. We love these opportunities for consultations and pitches. So we work hard to make that a good experience for sure.
Well, it works because I know of several people who did, in fact, find agents last year at WriterCon. So pat yourself on the back. And these are with, every one of the agents we've got coming to this conference is top flight from a major agency, people I would be perfectly happy to have be my own agent. So I have no trouble recommending them to others. Now, Jesse, in a new WriterCon first, you're going to be recording the sessions and making them available to attendees after the conference ends. Audio recordings, I should specify.
That is correct, yes.
So you're going to be busy.
Yes, I am. I'm going to have to rent a lot of little recording things. There's Zoom P4s, by the way, if anyone who is listening is into that sort of thing. They're going to be Zoom P4s, which will plug into all the soundboards in all of the rooms for all of the 70 presenters.
And clipping it on people's lapel all day long, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully I can use the sound that's already in the room, but God willing, that's the case. If not, then, oh boy.
Yeah, the nice thing, though, is that, sometimes people see 2 or more sessions scheduled at the same time, and they worry about which one should I. Well, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Don't fret. Go to one and then listen to the other one later on, right?
Yeah. And if the presenter has a PowerPoint, maybe I'll throw that on top of the audio too. Who knows? We'll see how much time I have. So
I wouldn't put it past Jesse. He is pretty impressively creative. Okay, our interview today is with Susan Meissner. Susan is our Friday keynote speaker at WriterCon. She's a USA Today best-selling novelist with something like 750,000 books in print, sold, so actually in readers' hands in 18 different languages. Her critically acclaimed and award-winning works of historical fiction have been named to numerous lists, including Publisher Weekly's annual roster of 100 best books. Her newest title is Only the Beautiful, which concerns a young mother's fight to keep her daughter set against the backdrop of World War II. We'll talk to Susan after the news segment and a brief word from our friends at Draft to Digital.
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson with Draft to Digital. Ebooks are amazing, but there's just something about having your book in print. That's why we built D2D Print. We take care of you with free layout templates and formatting, and we can convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound print cover automatically. Come check out D2D Print and all the cool tools we've built for you. Find out more at draft2digital.com.
All right, our first news story, and let me just say up front, this really seems more like the kind of thing that Renee usually brings to the podcast, but this time I have to take the blame for another in our series on weird things writers do. The headline here is the female author who penned a grief book for kids is now charged with her own husband's murder. A Utah woman who wrote this children's book on grief that she wrote with her 3 boys following her husband's death, and now she's been charged with the murder, aggravated murder, and 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance.
Awkward.
Yeah, right. That's. I'm so glad I didn't publish that. It was a chance. Her name is Curry Richens, and she's the mother of 3 who claims that she found her husband lying unresponsive in their bedroom after he consumed a drink she made. She said she served him a Moscow Mule to celebrate the closing of a house. He runs a real estate business in Camas, which is just east of Salt Lake City. She then went to look over her children, one of the children in a different room. She says she fell asleep, and when she woke up around 3 a.m., her husband was dead. But an autopsy later determined that the husband had died from orally consuming about 5 times the lethal dosage of fentanyl, according to court documents. Renee, I'm not going to ask you if you think she's guilty, but I am going to ask, given how many stories we've had lately about authors behaving erratically, do you think it's relevant that she's a writer?
Okay. I did actually, I read this case as well and thought it was just crazy. Yeah. But it's so interesting how writers have to work out their guilt and through their books, right? Like they almost always write a blog or a book or a novel. A children's novel's new. But my goodness.
Like children's self-help book, basically.
Yeah, hers is self-help. Yeah, children's self-help. Like, I don't know. I don't think any of them are going to get away with it because they keep writing about it and confessing on the page.
Right. I am starting to wonder if there's, when we're writing stories, we basically shape the world, the fictional world, to be the way we want it. Is that, bad enough to allegedly commit a crime, but then use it as the foundation? It's like for a book, you're just drawing attention to yourself.
Right. It's bizarre. Even didn't O.J. Simpson write? Like,
I didn't do it. Yeah, I believe that was the name of the book.
I did it.
This is how I would.
I did it. Yeah.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
So I don't know. I'm just saying, if you're an author and you're thinking about killing somebody, you might, figure yourself out here before you do it, because it's a weird phenomenon that and
do some research. Like a murder, someone who wrote mysteries or thrillers would know that they do autopsies on bodies and would discover that poison. Like, come on. It's bizarre. If you're gonna murder someone, be smart about it. Okay, that's all I'm saying. That's a lesson of this podcast.
They would not have Dateline if everybody were. But
that's right. What would all those murder shows would go away, right?
Yes.
This story broke last week, but just 3 days ago, we found out from court filings that the woman in question, the author, learned 2 days after her husband's death that she was not named in his will. She is, however, the beneficiary of some life insurance policies. But of course, that raises all new issues because most states have laws prohibiting people from profiting from murder. I'm glad those kids are going to inherit a lot of money because I think they're going to need therapy.
Absolutely.
Gosh,
absolutely.
All right.
Sick. I don't understand why you don't just divorce somebody, but okay, that's for another
It'd be
time.
a lot simpler, wouldn't
Right?
it? Okay, news story number 2. TikTok, or specifically their parent, ByteDance, has filed a trademark for a new publishing venture. Now, you've heard us talk more than once about the huge influence of TikTok and the subdivision Book Talk, which has had a huge role in promoting books and has shot some authors, Colleen Hoover being the obvious one, but not the only one, shot them to the top of the bestseller list. Well, you go in Barnes & Noble now and you'll see tables that say recommended on TikTok or something like that. And now apparently they're going to take it a step further because ByteDance has filed a trademark for something they're calling Eighth Note Press, which is an app, they say, to, quote, read, download, and discuss fiction ebooks in an online community, plus retail bookstore services, audiobooks, print and digital publishing, audiobooks and physical books, and also giving people a space to comment about it. So it sounds like this app would put TikTok into direct competition with Amazon, not only as a publisher and distributor of books, but also puts them in competition with Goodreads, which of course is owned by Amazon, as a social platform for people who want to talk about books. All right, Renee, I'm going to pick on you because you have come clean and admitted to your major TikTok addiction, right? Do you think this is going to take off?
I don't know. And what's funny is, I love TikTok, but I'm too lazy to go get on another social media platform. So I only watch it if it's been posted on Instagram. So I don't know. Younger people, though, will jump on the newest app. So, yeah. And this is more designed towards the younger crowd. I'm done with more and more apps. I've got mine. That's the end. That's what I'm going to stick with.
You zeroed in on the best part, though. I think if it does get young people reading, then bravo.
Absolutely.
Am I the only one who's it was nostalgic, I'll use that word, for me when I saw kids start turning back to vinyl, like, ooh, I'm so retro, I'm listening to records, and I think, yeah, except I'm old enough to remember why we abandoned vinyl and the pops and cracks and hisses and scratches and all that. But now I'm seeing kids running around like, oh my gosh, look, I'm reading a book made of paper.
Absolutely. Well, you get that wonderful paper smell when you read a book. I don't get that anymore with my e-reader.
That's true.
Amazon should sell a Kindle that just releases the book smell every couple seconds. Oh, Amazon, get on that.
Oh no, you should go patent that.
Trademarked internet. I've trademarked it.
Sadly, coming up with the idea isn't enough. You got to go file. So do that tonight.
All right.
Online.
All right. Another thing I have to do today. All right.
Do we really need, Jesse, another app where people can talk about books?
Well, first of all, no. And also, like, apps that are specific to a thing never succeed. Like, there's a reason why TikTok in general succeeded, is because you could do anything and talk about anything on it. Like, it became a good book talking thing. But if you make something just centered on that, I don't think people are thinking about interacting on those topics enough all the time to have its own separate app. But I've been wrong before, so we'll see. But
it would be nice to think about people going to a book exclusive app like as often as they do Instagram.
Yeah. I don't think Goodreads has the hits that Instagram and TikTok have. So
no. All right, Jesse, cue up the music. Let's talk to Susan Meissner.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. And of course, later this year at WriterCon. Of course, traditional first question. If you could give writers one piece of advice, sort it down from probably the 47 or so that you could give, but if you have to pick one, what's it going to be?
When I'm asked this question, there's a lot of answers I could possibly give. And so the one I'm going to give today may not be the one I give tomorrow, but for today, I would say read the good stuff. Because when you're a writer, what you're reading is feeding your writing brain. It's not just entertainment for you. You are really absorbing what you're reading into a different place in your brain because you're a writer. So you really don't have time for the fluff. And I don't mean you can't ever enjoy an entertainment, like media for entertainment, just for entertainment's sake. But I would say that's for like your viewing, like when you're streaming on Netflix or one of the other services and you're watching a movie or something, then you can watch something that's just total entertainment.
Right.
If you're reading, just read the good stuff. And you probably know what reads good to you. It's the kind of thing that you can tell that writer really put their heart or his heart and soul into that book. That's the stuff you want to be reading, just the good stuff.
That is so true. Often I hear people say, no, I didn't read that. That's not what I write, or that's not this or that. But if somebody is a good writer, that's the main thing, right? And you never know what you're going to bring away from that. It's all going up in the brain somewhere and being stored till you need it, right?
That's what I think. I think that you don't realize how much of that other writer's style and just the caliber of their writing that you are picking up on, because you're thinking, I'm just reading this, but your writing brain is reading it too. And you need to be careful with it, nurture it, be good to it.
Well, you have certainly done that, Susan. You've created what seems to me to be a blend of historical fiction and women's fiction that is not only wildly successful, obviously, but also unique to you. How did you come up with that?
Well, when I first started out the writing gig, I didn't really know where I fit. I kind of had to find my way, which is not a bad way to go. I began writing in 2003, contemporary, and kind of was like just testing the waters, I guess you could say.
Sure.
And then I wrote like 3 mysteries because I love mysteries. I love reading them, but they are really difficult. So my hat goes off to anybody that writes mystery. It's a tough one, and so good, but really difficult. You have to be so careful all along the way. And then I stumbled into historical fiction in 2008. And I think that's when I found my lane. It's what I guess it might be what I write best as far as like critical reviews. They started to come in when I started writing historical fiction. And it's not that I particularly want my books to be seen as women's fiction. It's just that my protagonists are all female. And I guess because my ideal character is a woman only because she's my ideal reader. So I'm trying to appeal to my reader. I'm thinking market-wise when I make that choice. But it's not just a market choice. I like reading books about women who encounter extraordinary events in their lives and they navigate them and they come away different, stronger, a better human being. There's lots of different ways a character can grow and change. But I'm finding my favorite books are usually with strong female characters or characters who find out how strong they are.
That's so good, Susan. That's such wise words from a pro, because it's a gentle way of saying write from your soul, but don't forget your reader, right? And it takes a long time to find that. So wise words. So tell us about Only the Beautiful.
All right.
Okay, well, this book took me to the mat. I explained that in the author's note. I had to start it, I think 3 or 4 times. It was quite the odyssey. Part of it might have been because I wrote it during the pandemic, and that was a very unique time for all of us. It was kind of it was a fearful time. It was a little bit creativity stumping time. And so out of that crucible, I wrote that book. And the other part was, it was just a really difficult story, subject matter wise. It's about a movement we don't hear much about anymore. It's the eugenics movement, which was really quite popular in this country in the early part of the 20th century. And it was about manipulating and controlling and managing the collective gene pool. And so it was very unfair to a great many people because the people in power began deciding and then controlling who could have children and who could not. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of shocking that we were doing that here in the United States. It's the exact same way that Hitler began his scheme in Nazi-occupied Europe. And we know where he took that thinking. He took it to its absolute worst. And so it's a story not about true people, but true events. And because it's such a difficult subject where a lot of sad things happened, it was really important to me to keep hope in the pages. So I'm telling you right now, It is not a book that will have you running to hide all the sharp objects. Even though I talk about some really tough things that really happened.
Mhm.
I do leave lots of room for hope and light. And as difficult as the world can be, or should I say, as difficult as we can be to each other, there are still wonderful people in the world, and they're in this book too.
Good.
That's so good. So that I love that, and I love knowing you personally. You're such an ambassador for hope, and so that it doesn't surprise me that would be infused also in your book. But tell us about how you drew up your characters in this book, Roseanne and Helen. Right? Where did you draw them from? I mean, you've talked generally about your characters, but these must have come from a deep place.
Yeah, with Roseanne, she's the younger protagonist in a story that involves two women, one young, one middle-aged, I guess you could call the other one Helen. And Roseanne is patterned after a real person. Her name is Carrie Buck. She was a victim of this movement, the eugenics movement. She was living in Virginia, born in 1906. So when she was in her teenage years, a target fell on her back too. And I don't want to spoil the story by telling you too much about Carrie Buck, but I did not tell Carrie Buck's story beyond that because it's just too sad. Nothing good happened to her because of this movement. And so I patterned Roseanne after Carrie Buck, but she's not Carrie Buck. It's not Carrie Buck's story. So that's where the motivation came for Roseanne's character. When the book opens up, she's 17, unmarried, an orphan, and she's got a sensory anomaly called synesthesia, which was not well understood back then. And so that puts a target on her back by these people who thought eugenics was all about having only perfect people being born. And it is a hereditary condition. So that's how Roseanne came to be. Helen is really me in the story. She's, for lack of a better word, I thought if I were able to somehow insert myself into the life of somebody who was being victimized by this program, what could I do to help them? And, she's a mother at heart, even though she is not a mother, she's a nanny. She has mothered many children, and she's an expat working as a nanny in occupied Vienna. And so she sees eugenic thinking at its absolute worst. And she comes back from the war a changed person, and she knows Roseanne. They've met. Her brother, Helen's brother, lives on the vineyard that had been Roseanne's home, and she's going to find out what happened to Roseanne, and then she's going to want to move heaven and earth to find her, to be able to do something good for that person. So that's me. That's me in the story.
Right. Well, you're always there somewhere, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I won't spoil too much, but I've been working on a book that revives one of my previous series characters, really in a secondary role, but after so long, I had forgot how much of myself I had put in the character. It's hard to even write a scene where, he isn't the one that says the clever thing or does the brilliant thing in the courtroom or whatever. Because that's me. He's supposed to be the star, even though he's really not.
It's okay for us to show up in our characters because they emerge out of our brain. Right. And so there's going to be a little bit of you in everybody you create, even your antagonist.
Yes.
There's going to be a little bit of you, and that's okay.
You got to find a connection, a way in to understand the character. I totally get that. So just to be clear, this book is set historically, as we said, but it's pre, during, and a little bit post World War II, right? So you must have done an enormous amount of research for this.
I knew nothing really about the eugenics movement, so I had to educate myself on that. And there's a really good book about it, and a nonfiction work. It's kind of the definitive work on the eugenics movement by Alexandra Meissner, and it's called Eugenic Nation. Wonderful book. And so that was a learning process. And then also synesthesia, I don't have it. So I had to find people that did and talk to them about that condition. And that was really exciting and wonderful and opened my eyes to how beautiful the world could be if you could just see it differently. And I love that. It's a metaphor for opening our eyes to see more than just what we look like when we look in the mirror.
I love that you said you didn't just read about it, you talked to people. so important in research on those types of things. And like you said, really opened your eyes and is always a valuable experience just as a person, I found. Okay. And then the setting is partly in Austria, part in California. So you picked California, is that because of where you have lived for many years, or what was the reasoning for that?
Partly it was that I know the state, but the bigger reason, and this is a sad reason, is that more people were forcibly sterilized in California than any other state. It's my home state. California sterilized like 20,000 individuals over a 5-decade period, and no other state comes close. And so these are people who are in California state institutions for one reason or another. Back then, there were a lot of reasons why somebody shouldn't have been sent to an institution. But some of us didn't know how to take care of children that were born to us with different kinds of capabilities. A lot of people would send their Down syndrome children to live in institutions. And now we know better how to care for people at home. But back then, a lot of people were institutionalized who wouldn't be today. And those were the kind of people they were forcibly sterilizing. So that's why California, I chose it because I know it and because of the amount of forced sterilizations that happened there. And then the California vineyard I wanted a place that was very sensorial because Roseanne has a sensory anomaly. And a California vineyard, there's a lot to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And so all of that worked really well for me.
So in this book, you've got two different protagonists, two different places and times at least, but your story is fundamentally about mothers and daughters, it seemed to me, or the relationship between mothers and daughters. Was this a conscious choice or something that emerged while you were writing it?
It was a conscious choice, mainly because when I know thematically what I'm trying to do, that's kind of like what guides me as I'm writing. It's really hard when you lose your way as you're writing. And I've done that. I have lost my way with other books. And so if I know from the forefront, thematically, what is this book about? If I find that I'm losing my way as I'm writing, I just remind myself, this is a book about the love between mothers and their children, or mother figures and child figures. And so that kind of reorients me if I lose my way. And the other thing is I do have a great majority of my readers are female. That doesn't mean they all have children, but they all had mothers. So I feel like I can tap into a lot of the sensitivities of my reader by having that very common thing. Not very many people have synesthesia, but all of my readers were born to somebody. And that makes a really large like rivulet, I guess, of commonality between us.
Well, it sounds amazing. And but I do want to shift to writing process because we do have a lot of writers listening. Now, I happen to know the answer to what I'm getting ready to ask Susan. Which
it's always safest when you know the answer in advance.
That's true. Well, we like to keep things exciting around here, unless things have changed.
We have been surprised on occasion.
We have, absolutely. It's usually me creating an awkward moment. But the question is, are you a pantser or a planner? Now, Susan and I have, I hope you remember this, Susan, we have actually taught a class together on this subject, as have Bill and I taught this class. I love being the resident pantser. I'm assuming
someone's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. But what was interesting is I heard you talking about how you have lost your way in books. Now, I have made what apparently is an assumption that planners never lose their way in a book. So talk a little bit about that. You are an outliner still, right?
I am, but I have evolved since we taught that class, so many moons ago.
What?
I now say, when people ask that question, I say I outline by the seat of my pants. I do outline. I begin the work with a map of where I think I'm going to go.
Okay.
And that helps me get started. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where to start. And then I wouldn't know where I was going if I didn't know where I wanted to end up. So I do outline like I did back in the day when we taught that class. I still outline just like that, but it's very fluid now. It changes a lot when I'm writing. And the cool thing about that is everything that you enjoy as a pantser, that discovery, that intuitive thing that kind of takes over as you're writing, I get to experience that now too. Because as I'm writing, I'm always open to discovery. So I have an idea of what I want to have happen in chapter 3. And so I'll begin it, maybe even at the point where I thought it would probably begin, but then I'm ready for anything and everything to change. And so that's when I can lose my way, is if I start deviating from that outline, and then I'm so far afield of it that I'm not really sure where I'm headed anymore. That can be a scary thing for a former outliner like me, who is now really somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. But it suits me now. It fits me now. But I also think that in the beginning, when I was kind of a new fiction writer, I needed that outline. I needed the map because I didn't know how to drive the car. It's like I needed everything to be able to navigate my way through a story. And the first thing I had to have was a map. And now I'm okay with getting in the car and just seeing where the road takes me. But I still kind of have to have that map in the glove box. It still has to be there.
That's great. I love it. And so, what are some tips that you have for writers? And I love that you're speaking of evolving. We do evolve as writers. You and I have been writing for over 20 years. I think that might be how long we've known each other too. What are some tips in this phase of your career that you have or you would love to share?
Well, first and foremost is that as you continue to write more and more and more, especially if you've been at it for maybe a decade or more, don't be surprised if it starts to feel like it's getting harder and not easier. Because a lot of pursuits, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so the more proficient you feel and the easier the task is. If I were a swimmer and I began swimming and like could barely swim a lap in the pool, and all of a sudden 10 years later, I'm just smoking those laps. You know, I can swim a mile now and I'm still winded, but I can do it and it's not hard. Writing, on the other hand, seems like to me that it's gotten harder the more I've done it, not easier. And that scared me a little bit at first. I started to feel like a hack, or that I was losing my edge, or I'd fallen out of my groove. But what it really was is that I'm raising the bar each time I write. So it's a different pool. Every time I go in the water, I'm not swimming the same mile. It's different each time because you begin with a blank piece of paper and I don't even think cursors blink anymore, but we used to say
That's right.
blank piece of paper, blinking
New
cursor,
metaphor.
and a whole lot of nothing. And that can be daunting, especially if you've been doing it for a while and you're thinking, why isn't this getting any easier? I'm here to tell you it's okay if it's not getting easier. I would love to talk with you if it is getting easier and tell me how you do that. It is okay for you to feel like I'm not getting, you are getting better at it, but it's not getting easier, if that makes sense.
It's because you keep challenging yourself and trying new things, don't you think? You're not writing the same book over. In my past life as a trial lawyer, everybody's super nervous before a trial starts, particularly if it's your first one, and it gets easier each time. And I've heard people say, I didn't stick around long enough, but I've heard people say that at some point that nervousness goes away. And I think, and that's when you should quit. Because that has a function, that keeps you on your toes and keeps you alert and makes sure you do the preparation. And I feel the same way about books. It comes, if it's too easy, you're doing what you've done before. You're repeating yourself.
Well said.
Well, of course, we've already talked about the fact that you're coming to WriterCon this year. You're our keynote speaker on Friday, the very first day of the conference, plus you're speaking. And tell us a little bit about that. I know we're not the only conference on your schedule, but we're clearly the most important one. So,
I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait to come back to Oklahoma. My son went to OU, and so I have very, very fond memories of being.
really?
Yeah, he went to law school at OU.
Me too.
Really? How fun. You guys should be together sometime and chat.
That's right.
So yes, I can't wait to come and visit with all of you. And the reason why I do writers conferences is I was once where new writers are now, and people spoke into my life and showed me the ropes. And I'm so, so grateful, because you can read great books on the craft and all of that. But writers conferences, they're kind of singularly the most influential thing you can do for yourself as a writer, is to go to a conference and be around other writers and be around writers who want to help you. Like usually faculty at writers conferences, they're there because they want to help you become a published author. And that's just a great place to be. So I'll be teaching on plotting your novel from start to finish. And it is a little bit of a class on outlining, but because I've told you how I outline now, it's also going to be to show you how to open yourself up to discovery as you write. So it's kind of a way of envisioning your novel before you write it, so that you have that map in the glove box as you're writing. So I'm really excited to share that with everybody.
Oh, that sounds terrific. All right, one last question. Only the Beautiful is a hit, and you've got fabulous reviews. What next?
Oh my goodness. Well, I've written a children's book. It's my first. And yes, it's called Pumpkin Day at the Zoo. And it's a picture book. It's 32 pages of fun and verse. The story is told in verse, and there are no tissues required. Most of my books will have you crying at some point, but not this one.
You spared the 4-year-olds. That's really nice.
Yes, right. It's all fun, and it comes out in July, and I can't wait to share that with all.
Oh, cool! We'll have copies at WriterCon then. Excellent.
Oh, that'd be fun. I would be happy to share that with everybody there. It was a really fun project. But the book I'm writing next for my adult readers is doesn't have a name yet, but it's set in the 1950s, post World War II, at a time when you would think the world would be much at peace after having such a terrible period of strife during World War II. But the 50s were rather difficult, actually, and mainly because it was the beginning of the Cold War. And so, and there's a great many people who are DPs, displaced people, and they're living in that world, and they're homeless. And so it's a story about displacement, and not just the DPs, 200,000 of which came to America because they could not return home, either because there was no home to return to, or returning home meant subjugating yourself to Soviet rule. And so it's about that, and it's about what does it feel like when everything that constituted home for you is suddenly gone? How do you reclaim your sense of belonging? Which is a very wide thematic statement about the book, but it is about people, not about topics. And so these people are all dealing with displacement of one kind or another.
Sounds very intriguing. Can't wait.
Thanks.
Susan, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Just a few parting words. As you've probably already been able to tell, we're getting excited about WriterCon. It's summer and we're not that far away. It's September 1st through 4th. That's Labor Day weekend in Oklahoma City. We have more than 60, almost 70 presenters lined up. Best roster of agents we've ever had, including movie, TV agents, as well as book agents and publishers, and much, much more. And Renee, of course, as we've said, is always in charge of the pitches. You have never seen it run so well. If you've been to other conferences, you will be impressed. Not only are you not limited to like 1 minute or possibly 2, you got a good 10 minutes at least. Plus, of course, you see people in the hallways and at dinner and whatnot. But it's just a wonderful experience. Renee, do you have any favorite stories about pitching at WriterCon?
Well, we've had a lot of people come away with some success, some good contacts,
Agents
that
and publishers,
kind of thing. I will say, I'm going to give some advice.
Oh, excellent.
If you're coming to WriterCon and you're interested in these, read the newsletters and instructions on how to sign up for them and what's going on. We're going to do things a little more efficiently this year, a little differently. So make sure you're reading the material that Bill is sending out to you so you're not confused at the last minute and don't know what's going on.
Although if you are, Renee will take you by the hand.
I will, because I'm so
straighten you out.
nice, and I will help anybody. But it will make things go more smoothly for you if you read that material.
And while you're talking, Renee, how's that script doing? You submitted to the Stagecraft. Is that what it's called?
Screencraft.
Screencraft. That's it.
Yep. It made it to the semifinals. So I'm super excited about that. So we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Good work.
Yeah,
all right, everybody. Dreams really do come true for writers, but first you got to sit down and write, right? And get the knowledge you need to make it successful. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.